Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Business Serenity Terms and Conditions website. I'm just going to launch straight into it today because we've got a huge amount to cover. So I'm going to start by just moving my video out of the way so I can still see the chat box over there and sharing my screen. And it will be that one. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is the Serenity series, legal webinars that are serious about your success. And the name of my business is, or the motto of my business is finding business serenity for you through wise management and legal support. And today we're going to look at website terms and conditions, starting with the homeschooling. Who am I? I'm a homeschooling mum, I'm a lawyer and mediator, and I'm an entrepreneur. So this is basically, if you're in any of the entrepreneurial Facebook groups, you'll probably see me around the place. I don't hide very much about myself. I'm very open, and so basically homeschooling mum is what I do by choice. I've made a lot of sacrifices over the years to be able to do that. And so a traditional career as a lawyer and mediator wasn't working for me, so I moved into entrepreneurship, which is where I found the work that really lights me up in terms of serving businesses, beautiful businesses like you, and helping us overcome the old paradigm ways of doing business. And that's why I'm really choosing to talk to you about terms and conditions today, because I want to move away from the type of terms and conditions that look like a barbed wire fence. We don't want our terms and conditions to be this massive barbed wire fence that surrounds, that locks people out. We want them to be the beautiful sacred container that holds the space for the relationship we're building with visitors to our website, with our clients, with our customers. So we've got a huge amount to cover today, and I'm just going to rattle it out at you, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So if you have any trouble or you're not keeping up, please just pop it into the chat box so that I can tell that I'm going too fast. So starting with the introduction, we're going to do an introduction. We're going to find out what are terms and conditions. Do you need them? Why do you need them?
To have a shower.
Yeah, I'm just going to mute someone there. Who is it? I can't see. Okay, so do you need them? If so, why do you need them? Then what must be included? What else is recommended to include? And once you've got them, what do you do with them? And at the end, I'm going to do a giveaway where I'm going to provide you with some amazing resources which will enable you to write your own terms and conditions in this heart-centered, this passionate way, making them a love letter to your clients and your customers and the visitors to your website, rather than this formal, structured thing that nobody wants to read. So the first thing is, what are terms and conditions? You might hear them referred to as terms and conditions, terms of use, terms of service. For practical purposes, these names all refer to the same thing. They are a document that you display on your website that lets your visitors know about your boundaries, how you expect your site to be used, and what your visitors' rights and responsibilities are. On an energetic level, just like a contract, your terms and conditions provide clarity and certainty, and they act as the sacred container, as I said, that holds the space in which your business relationship functions. On a practical level, however, you're also managing your visitors' expectations, you're expressing your truth, and you're complying with the law and covering your backside. Now, if you operate out of Australia or the UK, you'll more commonly call them terms and conditions. If you're in the US, you're more likely to find them called terms of service. But whatever they're called, whichever one, they're all the same thing, really. What we do need to distinguish between is the terms and conditions and a website disclaimer. They're not the same. If you've got a simple website that only provides information, you might get away with just using a disclaimer. However, if you're the typical entrepreneur, your website's going to be more complicated. You're likely to be selling goods and services, writing a blog, running opt-ins and launches. You need the full website terms and conditions, and these include a disclaimer section. If you're selling stuff, you're also going to need a refund policy section, but we'll talk more about that later. The other document which needs to be distinguished from your website terms and conditions is your privacy policy. We're not going to have time to go into privacy policies in detail today. That might be a good topic for next month's webinar. But if you are collecting people's personal information, even just names and addresses for an opt-in, then you need a privacy policy. And I'll talk more about that later and why it needs to be a separate document too. So, why have something that nobody reads? What's the point if no one ever reads them? The short answer is because it is illegal in Australia and in a lot of other countries too, not to have proper website terms and conditions on your website if you're selling goods or services to Australian consumers. Now, selling online includes e-commerce, PayPal or an online store, advertising goods or services that you sell by phone, Skype or a physical store, advertising goods or services for someone else like on Gumtree or a classified advertising site. Any way in which you're inviting people to spend money with you is classified as selling goods or services online. So if you are selling something online and you do not have terms and conditions, you may be breaching Australian consumer law. I'm absolutely not into scaremongering, but it is worth knowing that if the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, the ACCC, visits your site and finds that you're selling goods or services without a terms and conditions clearly visible, they can issue you with a compliance notice, and if you fail to fix it up, you can be fined. Now, that's not something to be scared of. You just need to know that, yes, I need these. If I don't have them, they'll at least give me a chance to fix that up before they give me a penalty. The next thing to be really clear on is that having terms and conditions on your site is not going to stop someone from suing you if they really want to, but they can be really useful in terms of damage control. They can also have a preventative function, as someone is much more likely to be advised by their lawyer against taking you to court for compensation if your terms and conditions are really clear and obvious. But even more than that, terms and conditions are your opportunity to establish a relationship of trust with those who visit your website. They clearly set out who you are, what your policies are, and what your expectations are. If you honour your terms and conditions and stick by your word, it's more likely that your clients and visitors will stick by you, thus circumventing any possible problems anyway. Now, the perennial question that we get is, can I copy off another site or use a template? The short answer is that is not a good idea, but you already knew I was going to say that, and here's why. First, you're putting your business at unnecessary risk. Your business is unique. You have your own beautiful way of doing business, and it's important to have terms and conditions that are tailored specifically for your business. Otherwise, you might find that you're covered against eventualities that are never going to be a factor in your business, but then you're not covered against the things that really are important to you. Secondly, the ACCC want to see that you are taking your responsibilities under Australian consumer law seriously. If you use a template and you don't understand what its contents are, or if you grab one off someone else, you copy someone, and you don't understand how, you don't know for sure that it relates exactly to the type of business you're running, that's going to be a red flag of non-compliance for the ACCC. They're smart enough to know whether you actually have customised the terms and conditions to what you do or not. And finally, terms and conditions are copyright, just like any other document or piece of writing that someone produces. If you copy one of someone in the same business as you are, hoping that that's going to cover you, then you're breaching their intellectual property rights and inviting them to take action against you. Again, unless you have a really clear idea of what you're doing and what you need to change, you just run that risk of the document not providing you with the protection that you need. So what do terms and conditions need to contain? We're going to go through this step by step. The first thing they need is an introduction. An introduction's purpose is to establish you and your business as trustworthy and professional. So you need to include some of the information that shows that you are a serious business. That could be your ABN or your ACN, your postal address, a phone number, an email address, just contact details, so that if anybody has a complaint or a question, they can find out first, straight up the top, really clearly, that you are a proper business and that here's where they can contact you. You also need, if you're selling goods or services, you also need a statement that you comply with Australian consumer law. And finally, they're your opportunity to give your clients a personalised welcome. And that's the thing that's often left out of what I call the barbed wire traditional terms and conditions. The other things I'm going to talk about that your terms and conditions need to contain are a disclaimer. They need to contain intellectual property information. They need to contain your refund policy and payment terms if you are selling any sort of goods or services. And they need to contain jurisdiction information. Now, if some of those don't make sense to you right now, don't worry, because we're going to go through each of them in turn. The first one is the disclaimer. A disclaimer is where you basically tell people that you have done your best to provide quality content, but that any action they take based on that content is their own responsibility. The risk is greater if you provide instructional information or guides, or make any kind of promise. So the whole sausage marketing stuff, get off Pain Island marketing technique, can be problematic if someone says to you, you promised me the moon, but then you failed to deliver. You could face potential claims for negligence, misrepresentation, misleading and deceptive information, or even fraud. All it takes is one grumpy idiot, really. They don't even need to have any truth to their claim, because you still have to go to the trouble of dealing with them, getting legal advice, preparing your defence. It's a whole lot of wasted time and money that could be prevented from the start by just having a good disclaimer. Now, the thing is, there's no one-size-fits-all disclaimer because every business is different. It must be closely tailored to the content that you actually provide and how you intend people to use it. Now, your mother may have told you, use your common sense, but unfortunately, you just can't assume that the world at large is going to do so. You have to spell it out for them. So here, there are some basic similarities that all good disclaimers should have, though. They would basically say that you're providing generalised information, not specific advice. Tell people to make their own independent inquiries before taking action on anything you say. Ensuring that everybody knows that they're not, just by visiting your website or acting on the information, that they're not entering into a professional relationship with you. That the testimonials on your website are not guarantees. If that you provide A, which is not a substitute for B, C, or D. So you provide coaching, which is not a substitute for psychiatric help or counselling. Or, for example, you provide holistic medicine, which is not a substitute for specialist advice, those sorts of things. Or you provide legal information, which is not a substitute for tailored, specific legal advice specific to your situation. You need to say that you take every care but no responsibility. If you're offering downloads, you can disclaim your responsibility for viruses or other damages. And you make it a condition of them visiting your site that they will accept this agreement and not make claims against you. The other thing you can disclaim is that you have no responsibility for content on external links or in third-party advertisements, so you don't get dragged into stuff that other people have posted that your visitors find offensive. Any website owner could potentially be sued for misleading visitors or for writing something that someone else finds offensive or unacceptable. That's why it's important to include a disclaimer, even if you believe that the risk of litigation is very small. In a herd of zebras, you want to be the one looking at the lion, ready to run, rather than having your backside ready for the nails to rake into, or the claws. If you're running courses or selling particular products or services, you may need to have additional disclaimers that are specific to those. I forgot I had a slide for that one. There you go. So that's all there. The slides will be released later too. So generalized information, all of the things I just went through. The next thing is intellectual property. You need to provide protection of intellectual property, such as your copyright and your trademarks, if you have them. You can protect the copyright of your website in your disclaimer with the use of a simple statement like, the content of this website is protected by copyright. No portion of this website may be copied or replicated in any form without the written consent of the website owner. That's the traditional barbed wire version, but you can put that same disclaimer, that same protection into your own words, and it will still work. Just as an aside, you should also make sure that the footer on every page of your website carries a copyright notice, something like copyright 2016, my business name. Or although that may also be, your website designer may already have their own copyright down there. Their copyright is over the design, but your copyright is over the content. So you should make sure that your own is there as well. And you can also, if you have images you want to protect, you might consider using an image watermark. Again, so basically, yeah, in the intellectual property section, you assert your ownership. You say this work is mine. You give your rules for copying. You give your rules for sharing, so that, you know, some people say you must not share without written permission. Some people say you can share freely on social media. Please share my work, but make sure it links back to my site. The thing is, if you do a blanket do not share without written permission, and then you encourage people to share by having a Facebook like button on your page, you're sort of giving a mixed message. So you have to make sure that your message is consistent, and that's best done by drafting your terms and conditions specifically for your business. The next thing is your refunds policy. If you're selling anything or advertising anything online, you must have a refunds policy. It's the law. That includes digital products like checklists, ebooks, and webinars. Australian consumer law says you must not have a no refunds policy. You have to guarantee your goods and services against faults, or if they do not perform as advertised. Now that may sound scary, but it's not. You just have to explain really clearly when you will and when you will not provide a refund. Now this can be limited in the sense that you can require that they give you an opportunity to fix any technical issues. You can limit it with a time limit, so they can say have 14 days, 30 days, whatever. And you can actually specify that you won't refund if you have a change of mind. And all of these things, as I'll show in the giveaway I've got at the end, all of these things are totally customizable, and they don't have to take this barbed wire approach. They can take, I've got an example of one guy I found out there who's offering 100% money back plus a bonus as his refund policy, as a thank you for taking the time to download his product. So there's a whole range of options that your refund policy can take. You do need to have one. And the other thing you need to do is make sure that your policy is fair. For example, the ACCC brought a big case against Deals Direct recently because their warranty was considered unreasonable because they only offered 30 days and the buyer had to pay the postage costs even where the goods were defective. So the ACCC chairman, Graham Samuel, said that every website that sells online should take notice. And the actual quote from him was, "It appears that many sites simply cut and paste information from other sites on warranties and refunds without checking that the facts are correct. Online traders be warned. The ACCC is reviewing sites and will be considering action if remedial work is not quickly undertaken." So once again, the ACCC are out there, they are checking this stuff, but they're not going to just slap a big fine on you. They're going to give you a chance to fix it first. And again, even if you are copying or you are using a template, do it really carefully to make sure that it is absolutely customized to what you're actually doing. Now, another thing to look at is payment terms. Payment terms are important if you are accepting, if you are selling goods or services online, because they give your clients and visitors and customers the information that they need to be comfortable and confident about working with you. So you state up front the methods of payment that you accept. If you don't accept credit cards, state it up front. State the method of delivery for your services, whether you deliver your coaching or your advice or whatever face-to-face or through Skype or what you use. State the shipping method and the costs for your goods. State how you process returns, so that your returns policy we've already talked about and we'll talk about again, whether you offer a refund, a credit or a replacement. And this information absolutely needs to be easy to find and easy to understand. So your payment terms and your refund policy can be either included in your terms and conditions or in a separate document on a standalone page, which might be more appropriate if you are very much an online store, then having your payment terms, your refund policy, your shipping stuff all in one spot is going to be a lot easier for people to find than having it hidden in your terms and conditions. You just got to think about how people actually use your site and what's going to be the easiest for them for this to come to their notice. The next thing that terms and conditions can do is manage the relationship. And this is your opportunity to explain your expectations for how people interact with your site and what you will and will not tolerate. This is where you set your boundaries. As Brené Brown said, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others. So people out there can have all kinds of unrealistic expectations of you. Here is where you get to say what you will and will not agree to, what your rights and responsibilities are. So if you have a blog, what's your policy about comments? Do you reserve the right to delete for any reason? Or do you only delete if posts are offensive or profane or rude or anonymous? It just depends on your personal tolerance level. How else do visitors engage with your site? Do you offer a membership or subscription area or a forum or an online store? Because each of these are very specialized little bubbles on your website, and they may need their own separate and specific rules of engagement to keep them happening nicely. Just like you've got your own rules of engagement if you've got a Facebook group, or just as you've seen how Facebook groups have their own rules of engagement, each little separate bubble of your site needs to have its own little terms and conditions in order to manage that relationship. You might want to also explain any interaction on your site with affiliates or collaborators or joint ventures, anybody who provides third-party information. Do they post content on your site, and are you happy being responsible for their content? Or is that something that you need to say is their opinion only and that you don't have any responsibility for it? The next thing is jurisdiction. A jurisdiction is just a fancy legal word meaning the location where disputes will be heard and the law that governs those disputes. So you need to include a jurisdictional governing law clause in your terms and conditions, and that's very important as it specifies the location of your business and the law under which disputes will be heard. And you absolutely want this to be local to you, not to your clients, not to your website, not to your web host, and not to the person you pinched your terms and conditions off. There's a well-known story about people, an Australian copying terms and conditions from a US website, and then they got in a dispute with another Australian client, and the dispute had to be heard under the laws of California because they'd pinched this American, they'd pinched their terms and conditions off an American site and not customized them properly. So you start with your terms and conditions being relevant to the country and the state or territory where you have your main base of operations. So for me, it would be New South Wales, Australia. And then you consider expanding your terms and conditions to other countries, other parts of Australia, other states or territories of your country as your business becomes bigger. So start just specifying that you have the ones that you need, the ones for where you are. But if you say expanding into business in China, you would want to have a separate terms and conditions for your Chinese clients, if they were a lot of them, to make sure you are complying with the Chinese consumer laws. And in that case, it's also a good idea to consult with a lawyer to find a lawyer who is in that jurisdiction. So for example, if you had a lot of clients in the US, you might want to hook up with a US lawyer and just get them to cast a quick eye over your Australian terms and conditions and make a recommendation or two about what might need to be changed in order to comply with their laws as well, just so you're covered wherever you're doing business. The final thing, so that's the content. You're done with the content of your terms and conditions. That's everything that must go in there. The next question is, where do you put them? And your terms and conditions page needs to be easily found. The more prominently it's displayed, the easier it's going to be to rely on it. Ideally, you need to make sure that it's accessible from every page on your website. Now, the online standard at the moment is to put links in your footer to your legal notices. That includes your privacy policy, your terms and conditions, and your payment terms, shipping stuff if you've got them separately. You can choose to have separate links for all of these documents, or you can use one link and have them all together on a legal notices page. There's no right or wrong. The main thing is just to ensure that nobody can say that your terms are not disclosed, that they're hidden, or that they're ambiguous. Now, for high risk or really sensitive material, for example, if you're in an industry where people often get sued, such as food or health or finance, if you're in an industry or if your website contains information that certain people may be inclined to find misleading, you're going to want to have people explicitly accept your terms by clicking an I agree button before allowing them to proceed. This act forms the basis of arguing that they entered into a contract with you and that they gave their informed consent to any risks and to your rules of engagement. Similarly, you might want to have them agree before they enter into your online store. Now, an agree section can be a checkbox with a link saying I agree or I've read your terms and conditions that appears next to your add to cart button when people are shopping in your online store. It could be a pop-up window or a page during the checkout process where a customer can read your terms and conditions that have been specifically targeted to the product or service they are purchasing, and they have to click an agree button at the bottom. And it doesn't matter whether they actually agree, whether they actually read it or not. If they're over 18 and they click an agree button, they can't come back and say, oh, but I didn't read it, I just clicked agree. Okay? They're presumed to be adults taking reasonable responsibility for their own safety in that circumstance. So getting them to click the agree button is enough. You don't have to force them to, or ensure that they actually have read it. And you can also get people to actually have to go through your terms and conditions page in order to get to your website and actually browse the stuff. And that can be useful if you're providing adult content, for example, or really sensitive information. And finally, this is totally sausagey, so I don't expect it to be relevant, totally barbed wire. But if you plan on selling any of your customer or subscriber data to third parties so that they can then market to your customers and subscribers, then you need to get their active agreement to that, at least by ticking a checkbox. What else do you need? So we've talked about the privacy policy. A privacy policy sets out how you collect and maintain confidentiality of personal information. And that includes email addresses, names, cookies, opt-ins, all of that. You must have this as well as your terms and conditions. You can include it in your terms and conditions, but the Privacy Commissioner has said that it is best practice to have it in a separate document. And your terms and conditions are going to be long enough as it is. So yeah, having it in a separate document is a good idea. You also may need special stuff in your terms and conditions. Stuff is an absolutely technical legal word. You may need special stuff in your terms and conditions if you license external advertisers to display ads on your site, if you allow contributors to post ads on your site, to post blog posts or anything else, articles on your site. If you run competitions, did you know that there are special regulations governing how competitions can be run? And this may not be a giveaway, but more like a lottery type stuff, all those sorts of things. They are actually regulated. So if you're doing this regularly, you might want to check up on and do some research on what the actual regulations are where you live for running a competition. If you're signing up affiliates to promote your work, you're going to need a special section in your terms and conditions for them. And if you offer an app or website that has specialized functionality, for example, if I can't think of one off the top of my head, but if people enter their information and get a customized response back, that sort of stuff, so then you're really going to need just anything that's out of the norm that you do. Have a think about what effect that has on your clients and your visitors, what could possibly go wrong, and how you're going to deal with it, what they need to be warned about, what you want to say to them about that. If you're talking to them one-on-one, explaining what you're doing and why and what their responsibilities are, what would you say to them? So, do you still think website terms and conditions are pointless and boring or scary? I believe terms and conditions are important for 3 reasons. They avoid misunderstandings between you and your visitors, your customers, and your clients. 2, they demonstrate to your website visitors that you are a serious professional operation. And 3, they help you take on the mindset of a serious and successful business. They help you take that leap from amateur to professional in your own mind. So those 3 important reasons are how website terms and conditions help you ground your castle in the air. Make it real, make it solid, make it protected. But I have a confession to make. If you are an astute observer, you will notice that while I have a privacy policy, I don't actually have terms and conditions on my website yet. And there's a reason for that. I could easily have adapted any number of professional templates for my purpose, because that's what most lawyers will do. You go to them for terms and conditions, they're going to have their own standard template, then they will use their expertise and knowledge of what is required to adapt it specifically for your circumstances. But I didn't want that tired old language, that barbed wire fence. And I guess I'm not alone. As an experiment, I went through a couple of popular Facebook groups and I stalked people back to their websites. And around 2/3 of those I visited, so 2 out of 3, did not have terms and conditions. So, to meet my needs and your needs, I have been hard at work creating something completely new. it's not a template and it's not a checklist. What it is a really comprehensive questionnaire that walks you through every element that we've discussed today. You can just work through it in your own time, and it will prompt you to gather all of the data that you need to draft your very own personal terms and conditions. Then there is a companion document, the draft one there, that is similar to a template, but it basically walks you through the process of putting the data that you gathered in the questionnaire into your own words, and so that you really do end up with a lovingly crafted document that speaks to your visitors in your own special way and that is imbued with your unique energy and your intentions. Now, my plan is to eventually offer this for sale, but for right now, for the people who are live in the website and for the people who are on this list and will be getting the replay, the Serenity series list, and be getting the replay, I'm going to be offering you the beta version for free. And all I'm asking in return is for your feedback on how the process worked for you and what sort of price range you think is reasonable for the finished version. As an added bonus, if you join my Facebook group, Business Serenity, I will answer any questions you have while working through it, and I will agree to review your finished document. So I'll cast a quick legal professional proofreader eye over it and go through it quickly with you to discuss if there's anything that needs to be changed. Now the final, I will put the link in the chat. Just let me get here. Oh, no, I can't see how to do that. I will, as soon as I stop sharing the screen, I'll put the link in the chat. Now the final tips are, when you're writing your terms and conditions, cover the basic elements, but keep it as short and as sweet as possible. Now, Microsoft's terms and conditions, Apple iTunes, the terms and conditions, if you've had a look at them, they're longer than Macbeth, okay? And that's because of all the legal language. Bring it into your own words. Make it relevant for you. Use formatting, so headers and bold type, to make it easy to read and to understand, to separate out the sections into really just logical, short bites that people can get easily. Decide on a consistent range of terms. So call a spade the whole way through. Don't call it a spade here and the shovel there and a fork somewhere else. So for invoice, use invoice every single time you're talking about an invoice. For quote, use that consistently. Put yourself in your visitor's shoes and write terms that are fair and reasonable for them, because you want to take care of them. They are the life of your business. And that's it, question time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can put the, does anyone have any questions in the chat box? While you're doing that, I will work out how to copy the links and put them into the chat. I'm just going to go back actually to that page. Okay, no questions so far? Okay, that's great. Okay, the link is, so it's bit.ly/TC_questions. That's the first one. And http:/TC_draft. And the thing is that this document also contains, there's an extra T in that. This document will also draft you everything you need to have a returns policy too. So it's not just your website terms and conditions, it's the full returns policy. And if you find it a bit overwhelming and you can't actually work out what it is, then at least you'll have a much better idea at the end of why lawyers charge what they do for drafting these things. But I really want to help you to see just how easy it is how possible it is to have a legal document like a terms and conditions that is totally you, totally customized to you, totally full of your energy, your intentions, totally what your clients need, what you need to really just create that wonderful castle that you're inviting your people into, to create that beautiful business that is your passion and showcase it in the way that it deserves. So that is pretty much it. We've gone a bit over today because there was just so much information here. And I think unless there are any other questions, I'm going to say goodbye and good luck with it all. I'll just stop the sharing. There we are. So here I am. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I hope if you're watching this on the replay and you have any questions, do feel free to pop into the Facebook group and ask away. I love to share information, but often I don't know what's packed away up in here until someone actually asks the question, and then it all starts pouring out. The last thing we have to do that we haven't done yet is set the topic for next month's webinar. So what would you like to learn about? Do you want to know privacy policies, or is there something else that's of interest to you? We can do contracts, we can do just about anything. And if nobody's got any ideas, then we'll probably finish off the website stuff with a talk on privacy policies and what they need to include. I'm just sort of looking sideways to see the chat. I'll move that over here so I can look at you guys. Okay, you're very, very welcome. I love doing this. So is everyone happy with privacy policies for next month? Any other suggestions? Yeah, privacy policies will be good. Okay, we'll do that. Okay. Oh, yeah, and absolutely contracts. Contracts, you're not going to get away from me talking about how much I love contracts and how much I see them as a really, really important, again, this sacred container that holds the space for a relationship, that manages expectations, that I think we do so much disservice to ourselves by seeing them in the old sausagey, barbed wire, fear and runaway style, fear and control. They can so much be that loving boundaries that that everybody needs. And if that's everything, if there's no other questions, I'm just going to say bye and until next month. Bye.